You're listening to Pushing the Envelope, Life at the Cutting Edge of Customs Innovation. I'm Tom Muller with the Cross-Border Research Association. On this show, we explore the frontiers of customs creativity in conversations with customs and logistics experts, technology innovators, research scientists, and other leaders in the field. Industry insiders call this show the Pencast because it's part of PenCP, a network for boosting customs innovation funded by the European Union under the Horizon 2020 program. Today, I'm very honored to be speaking with Ricardo Treviño Chapa, Deputy Secretary of the World Customs Organization. Ricardo holds advanced degrees in finance, international banking, and strategic management, most recently from Oxford. His public service career spans 20 years, first in his native Mexico, where he served the federal government in high positions in revenue collection, Social Security, and as Mexico's Customs Administrator General, and subsequently as Vice Chair of the Americas and Caribbean region to the World Customs Organization, and now, of course, Deputy Secretary General of the WCO for the last 5 years. Ricardo, thank you very much for joining me today on the Pencast.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for the invitation. My pleasure to be here. I'm very happy to contribute to this project, the PenCP project, through this Pencast, and looking forward to some of the good points of discussion in the coming minutes.
Now, it's going to be a great conversation. Let's talk a bit about your background and how you came to the WCO. For instance, in 2007, you became the youngest ever Director General for Revenue Collection for the Mexico federal government. During your time in this position, you implemented new technologies and procedures, which resulted in revenue collection tripling. Can you talk a little bit about these technologies and procedures and why they were so effective?
Sure, of course. Thanks, Tom. Back then, 2007, I was just 28 years old. This was my first Director General position back then. But this was the Director General position for revenue collection at the state of Mexico, the government for the state of Mexico. After 5 years that I stayed there as DG for this position, we tripled the incomes basically, and it was due to this strategy of trying to simplify and facilitate payment of taxes through automation basically, and through better coordination using and also through transparency. Before I was there, for instance, not every payment was bankerized. There were the use of technology, the use of payment online was not accessible back then. So we had to change the law. Actually, we did a reform to the regulatory framework in order to allow the use of these technologies, and it was quite difficult to go through the local Congress and to convince many of the stakeholders, because people were used to having going to the income local office, paying with cash their taxes and getting a paper with a stamp which would prove that they paid. So it was like a cultural change, a cultural shock for people, and even within the government, many stakeholders were not very optimistic about the result of moving all the incomes to bank and to online payments. At the end, I think after we did several campaigns for communication and people got used to it, I think the result was quite positive with tripling the income, lowering corruption, increasing transparency in the process, and through simplifying the procedures by decreasing also the number of requirements, making it easy for people to pay. I mean, it's already a tough decision to come and pay. You know, as a citizen, you know it hurts going to pay for taxes. So why make it complicated if you can make it easy, right?
That's very good point.
Putting forward all these facilitation procedures and using new technologies and based on transparency, basically was what resulted in this tripling of the incomes.
Fantastic. I mean, the words that you use, simplify, facilitate, automation, transparency, these are the golden words, right, for so many areas, and certainly for customs innovation. I'm trying to picture you, a 28-year-old, going to a variety of different offices to people who might have been twice your age. Just from a personal standpoint, was it a challenge to convince people who were set in their ways and perhaps felt more senior than you to revolutionize their approach to revenue collection, tax collection?
Yes, of course it was hard, but at the end I also had the support of the governor, of the minister, and together we did all this work. So I had the trust from them, and we had to convince all the rest of the stakeholders. But of course, some people would have called me maybe a bit immature or young director general to be even proposing these kind of things,
Yeah, I mean, that's of course when people are threatened by change, they pull out whatever defenses they can. But obviously, the results speak for themselves. Tripling revenue collection it's a pretty unambiguously good result. And 8 years later, when you were Mexico's Customs Administrator General, you also served as Vice Chair of the Americas and Caribbean region to the World Customs Organization, where you developed the first coordinated regional strategic plan. Could you describe that plan a bit?
Sure. Thanks. Indeed, I was suggested by the President of Mexico to take the Customs Administration around 2014, and I was then ratified by the Mexican Congress to take this position. And as such, during the transition, I was elected as well to become the vice chair for the Americas and Caribbean region here at the WCO. So when I came leading the delegation from Mexico to WCO, I was already vice chair back then. But I started questioning what is the role of the vice chair, what is the impact of the WCO around the globe. And the first thing that struck me is that as vice chair of the region, there were no clear objectives, there were no clear mandate, there were no targets. So it was basically kind of a political appointment, which you could use to make your name sound better, probably, but with not a real task or an objective. So what I proposed back then was let's do at least a first strategy, a plan for the 2 years that I will serve as vice chair for this region, and this was the first time that the region had a strategic plan. So we developed a plan basically on what were the needs for capacity building for the region, what kind of priorities we had back then already, and some of them are still relevant, like coordinated border management, exchange of information, e-commerce, integrity for the region, and we made a plan to work together with WCO in order to strengthen our coordination, communication as a region with the organization, but also seeking support from the organization to deliver technical assistance and capacity building on these specific matters.
I see. Fascinating. So you came in as a sort of a political appointment, and you created or reformed the job to actually make it operational.
Yes, to make it operational, to have a vision, an objective, where to move to, and not just being called the vice chair because it's a beautiful name.
Right. Sounds good on the resume, but you made it into something strategic and actually concrete. That seems like a theme in your work. Overall, how has your background in customs shaped your work at the WCO?
Well, it really had helped, but not only my work in customs, but as you mentioned before, I already started a bit over 23 years ago as a public servant in Mexico. And my first job was always in the financial sector, but I started in the banking regulation sector, and then I moved to the fiscal part. Of course, when I came to the fiscal part of my career, that's when I started having some more interactions with customs. In the midway, I had a brief stay at the social security and pension system. We reformed it as well, and this also helped me to develop many other skills. When I led the Institute for Social Security of the State of Mexico to make a reform, I had to negotiate and had to develop a lot of political skills to deal with the union leaders, with the workers, with the practitioners, medical practitioners also serving, and it was quite a complicated task, but at the end we made it. So all these skills, I think, that I've been trying to gather in my career have helped also my stay here at the WCO. Of course, when I also was appointed as head of the internal evaluation and anti-corruption unit of the fiscal agency, I had to start dealing very much with other international organizations. I was the head of delegation for Mexico for the anti-corruption working group on the OECD, for the anti-corruption working group at UNODC. I led the Mexican delegation in the work done at the G20 for anti-corruption, where Mexico, myself, was proposing back then to consider customs as a sensitive sector and strategic sector for combating corruption. And this was accepted by the G20. And the G20 mandated Mexico to lead this proposal and to develop some high-level principles in order to tackle corruption in customs. And back then, still as head of this unit, I had to deal with WCO, I had to deal with OECD, UNODC, and the G20 members in order to develop these high-level principles for integrity and anti-corruption in customs. And that was really kind of a bit of a big experience for me in learning how to deal with international organizations.
Amazing. Yeah. And that's in a wide range of organizations that you're dealing with, but also, as you mentioned earlier, the political and interpersonal skills to be able to bring a bunch of people with very different backgrounds, very different, stakeholder interests together and reach a consensus. That's a real skill, and it takes a lot of practice to get good at.
Well, it takes a lot of patience as well. As it has been said in many other cases, patience will bring good things to you. And let me, when I came here at the WCO, I was elected after being elected as Deputy Secretary General. One of the colleagues here took me aside and told me, "Congratulations, you're going to do a good job," and so on. I just want to wish you not to get frustrated, because if things move slowly at the national level, at the international level, they go even slower. So be patient, don't get frustrated, and just work hard.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice for everyone, but particularly someone who wears as many hats as you wear and has to deal with as many different diverging interests as you have to bring together. So, yeah. Customs. The customs mission is often described as a sort of a delicate balance between control and facilitation. I mean, ensuring that harmful goods don't cross borders, but also facilitating global commerce. What are the best ways, in your view, to strike this balance? And what are the key roles that the WCO plays in this balancing act?
Well, thanks. Thanks again, Tom. This is... I'm going to be a bit controversial on this. Not everyone in the customs sector would agree with me on this one, but for me, yes, traditionally, customs has been about balancing facilitation and compliance in many ways. But in my view, at least in the last few years, I think we have to stop saying that we need to find a balance between facilitation and compliance, because in my view, saying to find a balance means that you're going to sacrifice at least a little bit of one or the other to make them both work, but sacrificing at the same time some efficiency in one of them. For me, that shouldn't be the right view right now, especially with the technologies that we have available. With the right use of technology, with intensive use of technology, with real international cooperation, I think we can achieve both 100% compliance and facilitation. And there is no need to balance both, although it seems or it sounds that they are contradicting each other. I would say there is a way of doing them both 100%, being efficient through the right use of technology, by really developing a very comprehensive and real risk management strategy, which has to be updated frequently, of course, because the bad guys, the organized crime, are evolving constantly, and you cannot keep static, and you cannot just develop a risk management strategy and just leave it like that. You have to keep evolving. But current technology, if you build it correctly, would allow you to be predicting these risk movements, and would allow you to adjust accordingly in a very quick way. So in my view, it's not about balancing anymore. It's about really fulfilling both of these tasks at the same time.
That's very interesting, and it shouldn't be controversial, because in fact, when you talk about the right and intensive use of technology, that's something on everyone's lips. And this balance, as you say, should go hand in hand. I mean, it's in the best interests of good players in business to let their compliance take care of any particular problems before they even arrive at customs, right? I mean, this is sort of it's in the best interest of everyone to play according to the same rules, and getting all members of the global transport activity to work together, collaborate, share experience. That can foster general economic growth and prosperity and benefit everyone, right?
Yeah, of course. Now, it also, the role of customs has been evolving throughout the years. I mean, if we go decades back, and when customs was created, the purpose for customs was merely revenue collection. This was the main reason why customs existed, and this means that customs is naturally an invasive authority, unfortunately. So this was the reason why customs was created. Throughout the years, more and more objectives have been thrown on our way, and these have, of course, complicated many of our actions. After that came, of course, all the era of protectionism and how customs could defend some of the national interests, economic interests, basically. But then also came all this trend on safety regarding drugs and fake medicines that customs needed to stop. But after this came the facilitation trend together with the WTO. WTO created this wording of facilitating trade. It was not customs, this was trade, and trade imposed on customs the task of facilitating. Our nature is compliance. It's but okay, we took on board the objective of facilitating trade as well, and this has become a strategic objective for customs. So now we have protection of society, revenue collection, and facilitation of trade as main objectives. And after facilitation, again came a strong trend after the 2001 attacks, terrorist attacks, of protection of society through security and being the first line of defense for many countries and becoming a national security institution. This is now the view of customs in many places in the world. So you've been adding, and now some customs administrations are advocating and are suggesting that a new objective be added in the way of protection of environment, and that now customs should focus more and more on greening supply chains. So customs has been seen historically as a toolbox to fulfill many strategic objectives.
Yeah, and the job is constantly growing, yet the resources available probably are not certainly in line with the tasks that need to be fulfilled by customs. So there again, you're mentioning the right and intensive use of technology is spot on for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you see as the WCO's role in fostering customs innovation? I mean, helping to discover and apply new technologies, data tools, management approaches. How does the WCO operationally approach helping to create these new tools?
Sure. Well, the WCO has also evolved together with Customs Administration's role. The organization is celebrating 70 years of existence this year on the 26th of January, when we celebrate the International Day for Customs. 70 years ago, we had our first session of council here at the WCO, and that's why we're celebrating 70 years this year. But back then, 70 years ago, the WCO was created by 13 members, all of them European, and the purpose was to start exchanging some ideas, discussions, collaborating among customs in the framework or in the margins of reconstructing Europe back then after the Second World War. Now the organization has evolved. It has become a truly global organization. We have 185 members now, with almost 99% of trade. So the organization has grown, but again, it has grown dramatically in also in tasks, in objectives, in work, but not as much in budget and resources, as well as many other customs administrations have seen this reality as well. And within the evolution of our role and becoming global, I think we have defined very clearly what are our main objectives, again, which is assisting our members in their tasks of revenue collection, protection of society, and facilitation through three main processes, I would say. The one would be international cooperation, so facilitating the fostering international cooperation among our 185 members. Second one is establishing, developing, and maintaining global standards in order to harmonize customs procedures, trying to really facilitate both, not only facilitate the flow of goods of trade, but also facilitating the compliance actions for customs. If we harmonize our procedures, it's better to exchange information. And the third is delivering capacity building. And this third one, building capacity, is the one that goes more into the action, into terrain, and we assist our members in developing their capacities. Of course, you would imagine within our 185 members there are very different levels of maturity, of development, and this is quite a task. Trying to reduce that gap of capabilities is one of our main concerns. Now, these three main processes, as established in our strategic plan, capacity building, international cooperation, and standard setting, are supported by two other actions. One, effective communication, because we have been mandated to be the international single voice for customs in the world. We are the only international organization 100% focusing customs, and we represent them throughout the world. And the other one is through research and innovation as well. And here, this aspect of research is quite important, because it helps us identify new trends. It helps us identify threats, opportunities, and how to have a more proactive and not reactive organization. And here is where we are now focusing our efforts in technology and innovation, in the greening of customs, and also through a strong modernization after 70 years, a strong modernization of our governance and the way we're structured within the organization to be much more effective and assist our members. So we have a strong mandate. We have it clear. We have to assist our members in identifying emerging trends and innovating, and we try to do it through this cooperation, this coordination, and our research.
Yeah, again, bringing everyone to the table and making sure there's a good sense of harmony, a good sense of common goals. At the end of the day, it's not us versus them. It's all of us, moving towards the same ultimate aims. I mean, what technological innovations have you seen over the last decade or so that you are most excited by? And that can be data, that can be actual, physical scanning technology, that can be management techniques. What do you see as the most exciting new developments?
Well, let me add a little bit to what you just said, because I think it's an effort, as you mentioned, from many stakeholders, not only the organization. Actually, one of our main tools or elements to identify innovation and emerging trends, it's by developing compendiums of best practices. So we actually go to our members and ask for what are you doing? Because sometimes we don't have to reinvent the wheel, or other administrations are stuck by trying to reinventing something when someone else is already implementing a good solution. And by gathering this information, developing compendiums of best practices, presenting them and making them visible for the rest of our members is a way of also promoting this innovation. We also work closely with academia. We work closely with other organizations, international organizations as well, of course, and we also have a mechanism to work closely with the private sector. And here it's because when you were talking about this is a task for everyone. Sometimes in many countries and in many aspects, we see how private sector and public sector customs authorities are working divided and not together. We have to acknowledge that they are our main client, and we need if you want to facilitate trade, if you want to increase revenue collection, you need to work with private sector, and this is important. And I just wanted to mention that as well and build on your comment. But now going to your question on technologies, we developed also a report on new disruptive technologies, and we made an analysis, and all of them I find fascinating. Of course, there is artificial intelligence, AI, big data, all around the data analysis. We also studied a bit about the impact in customs on blockchain, drones, and other technologies that were analyzed in this report. Now, we also worked together with the World Economic Forum and did a survey to the private sector active in trade to tell us what they would expect, which technology they would expect would influence the most in the coming years, the way that we do trade currently. And the number one was Internet of Things, which is already being used also in several customs administrations, of course. The second one was digital payment. Then we had AI, and we had blockchain. We can find several examples already around the world on using such technologies, but I must say that in conclusion, we have around 40% to 50% of our customs administrations still not even piloting a solution on any of these technologies. And that is also something that we need to tackle. As organization, we want to promote digital customs, we want to promote the use of technology. And it's been some of the challenges that we're still facing. That's why it's one of our focus areas currently to keep working on innovation and technology and reducing this technological gap among our membership.
Oh, that's yeah. No, your point about making compendia of best practices is. I'm reminded of a wonderful book by Dr. Atul Gawande called The List Manifesto, and it basically says, listen, you need to codify the best practices in all areas of human activity in order to reach the best results. And that doesn't stultify creativity. It actually enhances creativity because you put into the hands and the minds of people working on these things some of the age-old wisdom that they should be aware of, but may be reinventing the wheel each time. So, one of the things when you talk about working public and across the public and private divide, working with academia, I've taken part in some meetings with public and private where there was a sense of hopefulness, but also a sense that there might be a differing level of trust among the different people around the table. How do you personally and WCO as an institution, how do you go about building this trust? And is in fact trust an important part of the collaborative effort?
Sure. Well, it's a tough one because at the end, trust is most of the time is built among people and specific people that are leading or in charge of certain efforts. And in this case, I think we've been trying to build this trust by getting closer and strengthening communication and coordination, but it's a process that takes time again, and that we need to build with certain patience, but strongly looking for it, and once the benefits are there, I think people need to notice and build on that. Definitely, I see from many experiences on the side of customs administrations, the perception that business, many companies are trying to abuse the system, but many others are not, and that's what we need to really benefit from. So. From the customs administration side, there is this, especially the people very much focused on protection of society and compliance. It's difficult to change their mindset, but we need to work together with them. From the private sector side as well, there is mistrust in the way that if they provide more information, they feel that the customs will share it with someone else. Within the government for fiscal purposes, for other purposes, or even outside the government for organized crime or business competitors, and it's understandable, and in both cases, because there have been cases, and that's why this fear is understandable. But I think we need to focus on the right things and the right benefits of sharing information and growing trust. Because at the end, legal businesses are also interested in protecting their own families, in protecting their societies. They're interested in the government having enough resources and to contributing fairly to the government for their expenditures and their budget, and of course they are very interested in the flow of goods, in legal goods. So if we all have these three same objectives, why not build on that? We need to find the right strategy to build on those objectives.
I noticed that you, among the many things that you do, you're a very busy man. You take part in a number of conferences. For instance, the recent IBMATA conference in San Diego, and IBMATA stands for International Border Management and Technologies Association, before a very multidisciplinary audience. And I can imagine that not only the speech or the panel that you took part in was helpful for building that kind of trust, but also what you did after, having a drink with someone, having conversations in and around this. What is that part of your job? I mean, and the WCL mission?
Sure. I think absolutely. I mean, we can use the technology now on have virtual meetings and meet by Zoom or Teams or so on. But still, you have to have this social contact in many cases. And here I'm going back to the word the balance, but here I'm trying to find the right balance in which, of course, having the opportunity to do part of the work through a virtual environment would reduce costs to the organization and to the members, and that's why we follow this strategy of also having meetings virtually, and also because sometimes members cannot travel to Brussels, and we have to give them access online. And this trend that has grown since the pandemic is something positive that we need to keep. But then, on the other hand, as you just mentioned, I think that social contact, personal contact is important. And WCO, as part of our objective of raising the profile of what customs is doing in the world, as raising the profile of WCO, you need to have this personal contact and visiting and meeting with the right people. And even since I was Director General of Customs in Mexico, I think the most valuable things that I found while coming to meetings at WCO was in the sidelines, while really having these conversations with other colleagues, Director Generals, Commissioners of Customs, to build this trust in order to exchange information, exchange experiences, having this direct communication when we had something to coordinate. So having the sidelines, these meetings and these personal discussions is, I think, what is most valuable of this type of events. ITMATA was not the exception. I had a very good time presenting what the WCO is doing in technologies and innovation on the one hand, and then participating in a very interactive panel with other colleagues from World Bank and Dutch Customs, as well as private sector, and discussing a little bit on the coordination that we need to have and how to help private sector to strengthen their communication and relationship with their own local customs administrations. But you are right. The sidelines were as important as those official public presentations, because I met with many people and shared so many experiences, things that I was not even aware of, like that is happening in the industry. For instance, in non-invasive technology with scanners and other aspects that were happening back there in the border and the collaboration between Mexico and the US, because this was held in San Diego. So there was a lot of added value in the sidelines.
Yeah, no, it's the kind of thing. Once you've broken bread with someone, or once you've actually looked them in the eye, been in the same room with them, so many of the potential misunderstandings, or you give them the benefit of the doubt. So that's extremely important. Social contact, as you say. This podcast is part of PenCP, and PenCP, one of the central goals is to create this network environment where multidisciplinary people from public and private, from research institutions, from governmental organizations can share their data and pool their resources and combine their efforts, not reinvent the wheel, as you pointed out earlier. Create compendia of best practices and share them. How important do you think projects of this sort are in the broader challenge of creating trust and creating a unified push for technological improvement?
Well, as a strong believer in coordination, a strong believer in cooperation, I think this goes hand in hand with our strategic objectives at the organization. So having this type of projects like PenCP, complementing what we do and complementing it with concrete actions, concrete network, I think it's quite positive. So of course WCO is looking at these projects in a very positive way. Creating these networks, I mean, it's not only about how you can innovate and produce new ideas, and then try to develop them among a network of experts or practitioners of customs, and sharing the same challenges, and then trying to solve these challenges through the use of new technologies and how you can develop this. It's not only about that, which is quite important, but it's also about building, and it's linked to the previous point that we were just discussing regarding trust. It's also about building this network and this cooperation among these practitioners or these experts of customs for the moment in which you might need to have that connection. I mean, and what I'm trying to say here is these type of networks might not have an immediate impact. You might just build a relationship and and have a conversation and share ideas and experiences, and it will take time to develop an idea. But not only that, when you have an emergency, an urgent matter, you have already built a network that you can go back, turn around and consult and see if there is any solution that you can apply to your case of urgency. So it's about this building network, and communication is also, let's say, forward-looking action in order to have the right elements when you need them in the future.
That sounds very much like the voice of experience. Do you have an experience in your past, without naming names or a specific, that where you built a relationship and then really in the heat of the moment when you needed it, you were able to draw on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, in many even personal and professional experiences, we've had these, and particularly, for instance, during COVID, when nobody still knew at the beginning of the pandemic, nobody still knew what was going to be the impact, how long this is going to last. We were all confined in our houses, and nobody could get out. But the organization needed to keep working. The organization needed to keep moving. We couldn't just close our doors and say, okay, we cannot do anymore. So I reached out to most of the people that we have built a good relationship years before, customs from I mean, colleagues from customs, but also from the private sector. And we started again working some of the challenges that we identified. Back then, we had, for instance, with the private sector consultative group at the WCO level, we met at least once a week virtually to identify where we could find some bottlenecks in the supply chain. So I talked to people from the air, from land, and from sea supply chain to see where were the main challenges that we needed to face. And of course, at the same time, we were in touch with our members, with customs administrations, sometimes in an informal way, sometimes in a formal way, trying to tackle these challenges at the supply chain, and trying to get the organization moving, and trying to implement. Okay, we couldn't come to the office anymore, but we quickly reacted and started working online and making all the meetings virtually. But this was through the help of many people that we had a network built before.
Some of the worst events in history also bring a level of collaboration, force a level of collaboration and creativity that is the good side of the bad events. What do you think from the customs innovation point of view, and from the WCO's perspective? What do you think are the silver linings to the dark cloud of the pandemic? What key lessons have we learned in customs that we should continue to implement, or that we need more work on?
Sure. First of all, more automation. More automation. Many procedures were established in a record time, by the way, because I think one of the lessons must be that we are able to do changes, and good changes, in a quicker or a shorter time frame than we usually, or before the pandemic, we were planning. So it was demonstrated that we could adjust quicker than planned, and that we could do better or simpler procedures, automized procedures, with enough efficiency to keep them. So more automation is one of them. Absolutely. I think also life balance. The working situation has changed completely. Now we have people balancing their work at home, work at the office. People having time to dedicate to their families. So work balance was another one. Particularly, I like to talk about as well a success story that happened during the pandemic, which was this strong collaboration with the World Health Organization, among other organizations that we collaborated with. But this showed us a way forward also in how to efficiently use our harmonized system convention, which is one of our main tools here at the organization. And the harmonized system basically classifies commodities for them to be traded. It's like a common language for customs administrations. And what we did was talk to World Health Organization. They gave us the list of essential goods that needed to be facilitated in their flow in the world to tackle the spread of the pandemic. Of course, it was about medicines, it was medical equipment, it was food, and so on. And we published a list of these essential goods already classified with a harmonized system code, and made it public for customs administrations to identify and facilitate their trade, but also for private sector, for business, for them also to classify and present as a declaration for customs administrations. And this had a very big support and success from stakeholders. And I think that showed us a way of also collaborating and doing things better by sharing these efforts between these two international organizations and having a real concrete deliverable for the people, for society.
That's an excellent example. And in the heat of the moment, two major organizations cut through any bureaucratic drag that there may have been and urgently produce something that was useful to millions of people. Yeah.
What I want to say here is another lesson learned is that international cooperation works, and that not a single or isolated country would have been able to stop the pandemic by themselves. We needed international cooperation, and by setting this example, what I wanted to say is international cooperation is, I think, one of the lessons learned as well throughout the pandemic.
In very general terms, what do you perceive as the key challenges for the next generation of customs officers?
Well, I think the role of customs will keep evolving. And probably will evolve faster than it has evolved in the last decades. And again, I think one of the challenges will be how to adjust to this new role expected from this new way of doing business, from this new global digital economy. I think customs needs to take into account that trade is growing in a way that if we keep doing things as we have been doing them for many years, it will not be enough. E-commerce is just an example. When e-commerce started and has been booming and it's a mega trend, I mean, customs administration's capabilities were really not enough with millions of packages, small, medium, big packages coming from all over the world, and customs were just not having enough capability to review them all. So we needed to we need to put in place the right technology to have, again, enough compliance, enough facilitation for e-commerce. And I think e-commerce will keep growing. E-commerce is here to stay. And at some point, I think we need to analyze what is the role of customs, because it's not only about tangible goods anymore, it's also intangible goods. There are services, there are services flowing, and there are digital goods flowing through the network. So what is customs really gonna do in the future? Maybe we shouldn't be stuck to the borders anymore. I think we have to migrate to a position in which we are a more strategic, comprehensive organization that has visibility over the flow of goods and commodities and services from a different perspective, and not necessarily stuck in the border.
That's very well put. It's not stuck on the borders anymore. And that means changing the mindsets of customs workers, but it also means changing the perception of customs among the general public.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a main challenge, which has been there for years and that still is relevant, is precisely how society, how people regards customs. We're usually seen as the bad guys, stopping the flow of goods, and most of the people, their first experience for customs is in the airport when they are asked to be when their luggage is checked and so on. And usually this is not a good experience, right? People get come tired from a long flight, probably. They just want to get home. And then there is this guy saying, yeah, stop here, I want to check your luggage. So how people see customs is important, how to communicate our objectives, how to communicate the benefits that customs represent to society is still something that we need to work on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there's an appreciation of protecting us from massive shipments of drugs or weapons of mass destruction, but at the same time, there's a sense of inconvenience of bureaucratic, intervention into our lives that seems a trouble, and that's a challenge to change. So, from the WCO's perspective, can you speak to some of the key future challenges and opportunities for your organization?
Sure. We see, as well, according to our map of opportunities, challenges, and risks, we see, again, this is one of them. We have it very clear, raising awareness on the role of customs administrations for society in general, so that we can communicate effectively the benefits of having customs administrations, but also raising awareness at the political level. If you compare customs administrations with other border agencies or other authorities, usually customs administrations do not have enough political weight in the decision-making process, although customs is usually in the center of the implementation. And this is because I think customs does not have a positive perception by society in many cases. And that's why I think many political leaders, ministers, do not invest enough of their time or efforts in customs in many cases. If you go to other international organizations that have more political weight and more resources than WCO, for instance, OECD, you see ministers going to OECD. You go to WTO, you have ministers of trade going to WTO, you have Interpol, you have ministers of security or police, heads of police going to Interpol. And the WCO, we usually have heads of customs, which is good and we appreciate, but usually a head of customs is not at the minister level. And that's why we need to gain more political support as well on that part. Other challenges, of course, it's digitalizing customs, reducing the capability gaps among our membership, not only in technology, but also in human skills and institutional capabilities as well. And as I was saying, another big focus area opportunity that we see is the greening of supply chain and how customs can contribute to this global effort in protecting our environment and our planet.
That's a tall order, but it sounds to me like you're equipped mentally and from an energy level to take them on.
I would just say that we are now in a process in which the organization is in the middle of a modernization plan. It is constant with my previous positions and my career, and at this point now I've been tasked by the council once again to lead this process of change within the organization, and it's a big effort from the Secretariat, the Secretary General, and the directors, and the rest of the staff at the Secretariat are working very hard to fulfill this task of modernizing the organization, and I'm sure that with this modernization plan, we will be able to, first of all, assist much better our members, assist society in our objectives, but also strengthen our collaboration and our position with other stakeholders, such as academia, private sector, and so on. So we're looking forward to work together with these stakeholders and really finding a way positive that benefits the organization and stakeholders as a whole for better results in the future.
I'm sure many of our listeners will be watching closely the development of this modernization plan, which obviously is a critical thing for us all going forward. So best of luck to you in your future work. Ricardo Treviño Chapa, thank you very, very much for a fascinating conversation and for joining us on the Pencast.
It's been my pleasure, Tom. I look forward to seeing you again, having much more conversations of this, and I look forward to hearing more about PenCP in the future. Thank you very much for the opportunity today.
Thank you very much. You've been listening to Pushing the Envelope, Life at the Cutting Edge of Customs Innovation, a podcast that profiles leaders in customs and their views, ideas, and inspirations about the future of customs innovation. Today, we've been speaking with Ricardo Treviño Chapa, Deputy Secretary General of the World Customs Organization. Join us for our next Pencast for another insightful conversation with customs trendsetters and forward thinkers. Thank you.